September 14th, 2020, 7 p.m., Town of Winslow, Maine, Town Council meeting. First item on the agenda today is a public hearing for ordinance number 4-2020, an amendment to the Winslow zoning map to rezone the following lots on tax map 13, lot 115, from high-density residential zone to mixed-use zone. Public hearing. If anybody would like to comment, please come to the podium, state your name and where you live.
My name is Andy Chapman. I'm at 24 Marie Street, so our property abuts that land. I guess I'd need a bit of clarification on what the zone change means. A mixed use, is he able to put a business in there down the line? I guess I'm curious for a bit of clarity on that. Yeah. I know as it stands, he came and spoke with me today. He said, he's just trying to put a garage there big enough to store a couple pieces of equipment. I get that part of it, but what's to say 5 years down the line, if the rezoning is approved, that doesn't turn into 5 garages and 10 pieces of equipment?
Yep, and I think there's a whole bunch of different lists for mixed use for that area.
Okay.
And I think, Adam, could you just get up for a minute and Adam is the code enforcement officer.
Sure.
And what it means from a high density to a mixed use residential.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, some of the uses that are allowed in the mixed-use zone. High-density residential is mainly single-family houses with a few very limited commercial activities such as minor home businesses. But the mixed-use district, as it says in our ordinance, the allowed uses are agriculture, bed and breakfast, boarding home, child care center, churches, congregate housing, essential services, farmers market, fast food restaurants, funeral homes, greenhouses, home child care, home occupations, medium scale principal solar energy systems, minor home occupations, mobile home parks, motels, multifamily dwellings, multiplexes as part of a mixed-use development, municipal facility, open space development, parks and playgrounds, printing, whatever that means, professional offices, restaurants maximum 25,000 square feet, retail, schools, single-family dwellings are also allowed, two-family dwellings, warehouses, yard sales, veterinary clinics. There's also a list of conditional uses, which means they would have to go in front of the planning board for any conditions they feel necessary. And those include auto service, community centers, fireworks sales and storage, government buildings, indoor recreation, kennels, laboratories, manufacturing, warehousing, and retail over 20,000 square feet, nightclub, nursing homes, parking lots, redemption centers, research facilities, retail fuel sales, schools, public and private, trucks and heavy equipment repair, and vehicle sales. Also, when you have a mixed use, like a commercial use, which abuts a residential zone, you are required to have a buffer, visual, and I believe it's like a 30-foot buffer between the two uses so as to stop the noise and seeing things that you don't typically see at a residential setting.
Yeah, and I think as we talked today, the gentleman who owns the property right now would have to come in for a conditional use if that went forward. Depending on what the use is.
Depending on what the use is. Currently, after speaking with the applicant, it would not be a conditional use.
Okay.
It would be a warehouse, which is allowed. Still required the buffer, though.
Okay.
How many feet?
I'd have to look it up. I'm not sure.
I think it's right in the thing.
You said 30.
I think
It's not the visual buffer of 150 feet, but I could be wrong.
No.
No. So how close, can I just ask it, how close can the business be? to-
If you wouldn't
Yeah.
mind, if you could, I hate to ask you, some
No,
people
no,
aren't
it's fine.
comfortable,
No,
but
I'm
that's
fine.
fine.
I'm just wondering how close the business can be to the abutting properties.
Well, it'd have to meet setbacks, and, I mean, you can't build within 10 feet from the line in both districts.
Okay.
I would have to do some more research, because basically I've never had to deal with that situation since I've been here. I believe it's 30 feet, meaning like a 30-foot wide grove of trees or something
Something like that,
Something to
too.
stop the noise, the sound,
Right.
and basically so you don't have to look at it.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, and I did have a conversation with Steve on the phone today, and as I said, I mean, most of the people that have bought this land bought there because it was a neighborhood. There was plans for 10 houses to go in the back. We knew that going in. That's not financially feasible, most likely, and probably difficult with the way the sewer runs. If they want to put a bunch of houses back there, that's great, but I'm not sure. And again, if Steve went with his plan, I'm comfortable with that plan, as long as they stay at the back end and probably away from abutting properties. Don't really want any business in the Quonset hut. Storage, which Chuck's using now, would be amiable, I think, for most people. A marijuana grow house, you know, any sort of garage type of deal, right? Because it is a neighborhood. So if there's a way that they can do it, the only thing is going forward, again, is the question of where is the plan? Like, has there been any plans drawn up as to where things are located?
No,
No.
my plan has always been to have a residence for my boy, 4
Yeah.
boys,
Yeah,
and a garage to put the equipment in, to be able to get out in the cold time of the morning, to get to the schools,
right.
or,
And then how much noise will that create at 3 a.m. when you're warming up the
I-
trucks?
well, they're in a garage already warm, so
Yeah,
you start them up
already.
and go. So
And then
it's
you
not
go,
like you're
so-
gonna get a whole lot of noise.
Right, I mean, because we just had the road construction going on, and
Oh, yeah.
5 a.m., they're dropping stuff. That was not enjoyable by any means, you know, so I think people just need more answers.
You can use buffers, you can use existing or proposed vegetation, fences, walls, or earth berms, land distance.
Right, and there was also, on the table was a daycare center, which you alluded to me at our first
Well,
conversation,
you know, that's,
and that wasn't off the table.
that-
Oh, it has, since, I mean, that was our only conversation really in regards to your plans.
That 150-foot
Yeah.
mark, it does come into play. That's if there's no trees, no fence, no anything else.
Okay, so that has to be-
distance. That's the distance.
Okay,
But ultimately, by rezoning it, any of those things are in play, correct?
Correct.
Ultimately, any of those things are all of a sudden in play. In 20 years, when your sons are on the property, they're now entitled to do any of those things to that property, correct?
It would
Okay.
still
If
need
they
a
have
buffer.
the room, but they wouldn't have the room, because if you've got 2 houses in the garage there, you're gonna run out of buffer space. You'll have no
Well,
room to put
but,
anything.
I mean, without getting into semantics and specifics of what's going to happen 20 years down the line, because nobody knows, all I'm saying is that,
We can't think of
just to clarify, by saying that we're okay with this, that approves any of those things to happen in the future.
or next week, if somebody changes their mind.
Correct.
That's my only concern.
Correct. Yeah, so if I could continue, I mean, so based on those premises, I mean, if my vote is no, I mean, it's a residential neighborhood. I don't have any problem with them putting 8 houses back there. It's a residential neighborhood, but we've owned the home for 40 years and paid taxes on that home. That's always been a discussion, is that, hey, there could be houses going back there. It's fine, it's a residential neighborhood. I don't like opening that window to allow all of that to go on in a quiet residential neighborhood that sat there for 60 years.
Yep,
So that's my 2 cents for my property.
okay, thank you very much.
My name's Ben Stafford. I live at the end of Lee Street, so this is the first I'm hearing of any of this. As far as, I mean, I've known that something's going on because it's been cleared. I would like to echo also the concern, the fact that by rezoning it, whatever's put there, even if there's not enough space, it can be torn down and they can put, I mean, that's just, it's too many unintended consequences that come with rezoning it for that. So that's where I would come down on that. My other question is since I live on Lee Street and it is currently a dead end, what, if any, plans there are to make ingress and egress out through that property through Lee Street. Obviously, being a dead end, it could always change, but it's part of the reason we live there, and it's concerning. And I will also say that I used to live on Rancourt Ave by the town garages there, and you got one plow truck, it's going to be noisy. I don't care how it's inside, anything else like that, it's going to be noisy. So I just wanted to put that out there, that I also have misgivings about rezoning it, and also too, if anyone can answer questions about what's going to happen to Lee Street as far as coming in and out of the property.
I'd be
Yep, going up, Steve, if you would answer the question, please.
because they haven't went at the last meeting and maybe not be privy to what the master plan was. I'll reiterate that on the Lee Street end, we were doing a cooperative effort with the town, whereas they need a turnaround. And so we kind of broke it off. So that at the end of the turnaround, there's room enough, 2 house lots on one side.
Kind of what they're doing now, they're turning around there anyway.
Right, but they're turning around on private property.
Right, I get that, but you're gonna leave some of that.
We're going to create an easement for the town to be able to turn around so they can effectively do their job.
Because that's been an obvious thing that we've had to deal with down there, so that's nothing new.
And so that's going to stay residential for the field. And even beyond that, it's still really residential because my boy's going to have a house here and my other son's coming back in 2 years from his wife's grad school, and they plan on residing there. So it's going to basically be 2 houses. And that seems less than 8 houses. If you had 8 houses there, it's going to be really cramped. If you have 2 houses, it's really kind of quiet. And I understand your concerns, I really do, but I'll assure you that it's designed for our company. We've been around for quite a few years. We service the schools for plowing. We do some town work. We do a lot of things for the community. And it's really difficult to start things in the wee hours of the morning when they're cold. And I've been working with Mike Kavanagh for quite some time now, before he left, to find a place to be able to, you know, one, keep the kids here and not send them out of state on another job. I'd like to see the business stay here and continue servicing the community. And you're not going to find a much lower impact business because of the fact that all our jobs are somewhere else. We don't work where we live. And customers don't come in and out to see me. I go to them. We're a site work business, and we only need a facility to house a piece of equipment to keep it from freezing, so we can start in the morning. It's really tough when it gets sub-zero to try to start a piece of equipment.
So just to clarify,
Yep.
so there really wouldn't, so there's no plan to allow for sort of through traffic?
No.
Just
no.
that easement to turn around?
The plan is to privatize both ends. This is going to be a private drive-in. There'll be 3 house lots on that end, and on the other end, there'll be 2 houses going in with a garage. That's it, in a nutshell.
So there's 5 houses down there?
No, on the other end, where the turnaround is,
Yeah.
so it'll be on the Lee Street end, there'll be a dead end, and there's room enough to maintain the 3 house lots for residential use. And then the other 2, the rest of the land is going to be for 2 houses and a garage.
And then what will the Marie Street entrance be?
That's what will be on Marie Street, will be the 2 boys' houses and a garage.
Private access.
Private
to the
access.
houses.
It's all going to stay private. There's going to be no commercial, anything from that
So the
standpoint.
houses coming onto Marie Street, yeah?
Yeah,
so that Marie
the
Street.
boys, yes, yeah. Out in
And
the
then
back,
the garage goes,
out there with one of the houses,
Okay.
depending on which boy wants it.
So, okay, and going down the driveway
Yep.
that wants to cut this here, and there's going to be your garage and 2 houses, where will those houses be placed? Like Andy and I are next to one
Yep.
another, you know where we are.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Will the houses be on that side?
The tentative plan is to be on that back line, because I want to try to utilize the sun, because the sun comes up, comes around. It's nice to have the sun obviously on your door, and on the front of your house to get maximum warmth.
I mean, realistically, the garage will be in our backyard, basically.
Well, it's going to be regardless, because that property is behind you, yeah. But it will be further back and not, up to the line, obviously. I'm sure you wouldn't want it 10 feet off the line to look at. It'd be better to put it out back, and I'm trying to...
And like, my thing is that I'm not necessarily concerned with your plan. I'm concerned with the bottle of worms that is being opened by changing a residential neighborhood into a mixed-use area.
Yeah.
That is my concern.
Yeah.
And there's not any way to alleviate that but to say I'm not in favor of it.
I get that.
I mean, again, we've had that house for 40 years. I intend to pass it on to my children, just as I'm sure you're trying to make a spot for your kids. Who the hell knows what your kids are going to do in 20 years?
Well, I mean, we can play the what-if game all day long for the rest of our lives, but the reality is,
And you're exactly right, and that's all, that's my point.
Yes, that's right. Anything else, Steve?
unless anybody has any questions
okay.
for me directly, I'd
Is
be
there
more than glad to
anybody
answer
else,
anything.
Public comment, anybody else would like to get up to the podium or ask Mr. Martin any questions any further? If no further public comments, then we'll end the public comment section, go into the regular meeting for the Winslow Town Council. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Ben Twitchell?
Yes.
Jerry Querian? Yes. Steve Russell?
Yes.
Where's Steve?
Over there.
Oh, hi, Steve. Patricia Ayer?
Yes.
Jeff West?
Yes.
Lee Trahan?
Yes.
And Ray Karen?
Yes. Could we all rise, please, to recite the pledge? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America
and
and
to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I have a motion to please approve the minutes of the previous meeting?
Second.
Second. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed. Communications tonight, Dave Pelton from KV Cap will give us a presentation on the plans for the old Winslow Junior High School. Dave?
Thank you. I have just a one-page handout
Thank you.
Wow.
Tablets or something.
That's kind of a low blow.
Can't see everything on my phone.
You want my vote, huh?
So, thank you for having me here today. Yeah, my name is Dave Pelton. I'm with Kennebec Valley Community Action Program, usually referred to as KV Cap. We have been looking at some options with the Winslow Junior High, and I guess the best way to explain it is it's a complicated piece of property to try and repurpose into something other than a school. I don't think that's news to anybody in the room because the town's been trying to repurpose for a couple of years into something else. So what we've done is, what KV Cap does from a real estate development point of view is we build affordable housing, not low-income housing, but housing that's sort of, workforce housing or senior housing that's a little bit more affordable than market rate. So that's what we looked for. That's what we've been looking into for this property. We've taken a couple of steps. We hired an architect to walk through the property with us. My job as the Director of Real Estate Development is to think about what is possible. I have a good imagination, so I can walk into that building and I can see an auditorium in the middle of it and think of some possibilities, or a gym, underneath it, and different size classrooms, and I can imagine how it could be repurposed. The architect then comes in and tells me what's probable. I think about what's possible. He says, well, this is how much it's going to cost to do everything you want to do, and then we have to have some reality checks. So we've done a couple of things so far with this property. We looked at Maine State Housing has a program for just straight up affordable housing, 9% tax credit program. This property wouldn't really qualify under that program because the auditorium and the gym just kind of, it doesn't really fit their model of what they want to do. So within the first couple of months, we realized, okay, that path won't work. We back up, say, well, what about historic? What if we went down the path of historic tax credits, historic turn it into a historic property. There's some funding that can go with that. So we spent about a month going down that road. What if everything was done from a historic perspective? There are some challenges with that because obviously the original part of the building is about 50 years older than the addition on the back, which was built in 1971. But still, as much as it pains me to say it, a 50-year-old building can be considered historic. And since I was alive when that addition was put in, that's hard for me to say out loud. But so we could use the historic funding for the entire property, even the 1970s portion. But but it still isn't quite enough from a funding point of view to really pull it off. So then we backed up and we said, okay, how could we split this building? And that's what I handed out today. Basically, the gray sections are what would be turned into housing, and the orange section, which is the auditorium on the second floor, and below it is the gymnasium. And then over on that side of the building, there's some classrooms that could be turned into office space as support space for the auditorium and the gym. And so that's basically where we are. It's taken a few months to figure out what's possible and what's probable and what's financially doable. And we think that there's a path forward if a third party can manage the auditorium part or the gymnasium part, and there'd be some office space that went with that. It could be a third party that could utilize either the gym or a sort of a renovated gym or the auditorium, or maybe somebody that just wants the office space. And then the rest of the property could be turned into affordable senior housing. So that is that's it in sort of the simplest terms of the different paths we've taken to figure out what's possible with that property. Of course, there is another alternative, and that is just to level it and start all over. When we were first approached with looking into this, that was the last resort option, was to level it and start over. So we're still thinking of that as a last resort option. Obviously, that would be a pretty significant expense for the town to go in and just clear it out. So that said, we have what we think is a path forward, but it would require a partnership with part of the building being turned into affordable senior housing, and part of the building being managed by a third-party entity. Could be the rec department, could be somebody else, another nonprofit in the community, to manage that space that would include the auditorium, the gym, and some office space. So maybe I should pause for questions.
Questions?
Yep.
If I could, Dave.
Yep.
I know that when we're talking about the auditorium, we're talking about the gym, and then there's some drainage issues around the building and stuff. What participation would KV-CAP have in the third-party building as far as bringing it up to code and maybe adding an elevator, or what funding would be available for that or not?
Yeah, so good questions. The short answer is we are factoring in, when we crunch the numbers on a project like this, we factor in bringing the entire property up to code. So for example, the gym is not up to modern code. There's no the egress out of there it has basically been grandfathered in year after year after year, but the fire marshal is already well familiar with the property and is very interested in that and making some improvements in terms of having things be up to code. So yes, KV-CAP would definitely take on part of that responsibility with the renovations. But bringing it to code is about as far as is financially feasible. For example, if that auditorium wanted like a major facelift and a major overhaul that's with a lot of cosmetic changes, that really isn't part of our financial picture. We could put sprinklers in. Doesn't currently have sprinklers in. So we could get sprinklers into the entire structure, but that's about as far as we could go, in terms of just getting it up to code.
Now, drainage around the building, how about the gym area? Would you bring that gym up to a usable gym or just up to code? What would be the situation there?
So again, up to code, but part of that, the egress out of that space is pretty complicated. It's kind of a miracle that it's lasted as long as it has as a usable space. But it's, from modern code standards, it would have to be wheelchair accessible. It would have to be, there would have to be some other accommodations made. So doing that in and of itself would change it from, there would have to be some changes from a current like full-size basketball court. Maybe it would end up having to be like a half-court situation, or maybe a smaller basketball court, or maybe it just becomes a very large aerobics room or something. I don't know. Those are some unknown questions.
Right.
But there are definitely some things that would have to be considered for that space.
Does the council have any questions for Dave?
I guess my comment, it's not a question. We switched to, it's more of a question for everyone here. We switched to a 2-school system so we didn't have to put money into the junior high. And now it's kind of like you're wanting to put it up to code, but also want, a little bit of a handout to kind of help you with that. And I'm not comfortable with that at all. I mean, I was in favor, and everyone close their ears, demoing the building. I didn't want the building there. So I don't really feel comfortable voting on something to put money back into the building when we went to a 2-school system for this reason.
Yeah, and I don't think there's a vote tonight. I think this is just.
Oh, no, I know there's not a vote. I'm just saying.
Information.
Oh, no, I'm just saying.
time.
Okay. There's my information I shared.
Yeah, oh, thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, can I say one thing
Yep,
about
go
that?
ahead, Dave.
I think this project works if there's a need in the community for that space. It isn't a handout from the town if there's a need in the community for the space. For example, Ken Walsh over at the Boys and Girls Club already has said, yes, we need more gym space. And so there could be a partnership with that, with the Boys and Girls Club. There could be a partnership with the rec department. There could be a partnership with local ballet studios that need a stage, that can't afford to go to the Waterville Opera House to do their performances. There could be partnerships out there that fulfill a need in the community. And so in that sense, it isn't a handout, it's filling a need, and it's the community figuring out how to meet that need. And there really isn't the financial obligation from the town would only be if that need existed. If the rec department, for example, needed a space for an aerobics room, that could be the space.
Steve?
I'd like to point out too that while demolition is an option, there's no question. The cost of that, the last one I saw was $750,000. And you get nothing but a parking lot when you're done. If we had to spend $150,000 to fix the egress with partnership with somebody else, and that solved that problem, and otherwise that was brought up to code, that's a lot cheaper than $750, and you're left with a usable space.
Yeah, Jerry, go ahead.
This bill,
As a senior housing part of it, you mean?
yes.
Yep, so that's actually a great question. Right now, it's currently zero tax revenue. It's a school, so obviously not paying any property tax. The senior housing portion would switch over to a for-profit entity, and therefore it would become taxable property. And in the interest of full disclosure, I also have every intention of asking for some kind of TIF or something to help the financing end of it as well. But long-term, these affordable housing projects have to remain affordable for 50 years. So even if it's a 15 or 20-year TIF, that leaves 30 to 35 years of taxable income for the town on the property.
Go ahead, Lee.
Just a quick question. As far as these housing units, how many, as it's looking right now, what's the total number of units that will be assessed, that will be available?
Yeah, so this is where the architect has been really valuable. He measured all the classrooms, all the back shop space, the cafeteria, basically everything that could be turned into some kind of apartment or housing. We've come up with 35 as a number, 35 units. And it's possible to do more if we can put a second story above the shop. There's just some structural things we have to look at. You know, is that shop structurally strong enough to put a second story on, or how much would it, what would it take to make it structurally sound?
Okay.
So it could be 35.
Follow-up question. If, with all these units, will they be, equal in size, meaning bedroom-wise, or is it going to be a combination of some larger than others? And what kind of, is it far enough in the thought process yet to decide if, you say these are going to be for the elderly, is there going to be an age limit regarding these units?
Yeah, so basically projects like this have to pretty much choose, is it going to be just family/workforce type housing, or is it going to be earmarked for senior housing? And senior by Maine housing standards is 55 and older. So in this case, it makes the most sense to do 55 and older housing for a couple of reasons. One is it would limit it to 1 and 2 bedrooms. And if we did family housing, we'd have to include some 3-bedroom apartments, and there really isn't that much space to put in 3-bedroom apartments.
We're almost there, Lee.
Go ahead, Trish.
Yeah, no. I'm ready. Well, I just, if I could, I just have one more quick follow-up question.
Yeah.
What is the comprehensive plan regarding retirement housing, making a certain number of units that are wheelchair accessible?
Well, first of all, the codes require at least, I want to say 10% of the units have to be, I'm sorry, not the building codes, but the
number of units,
the funding source, like Maine Housing has their requirements. I'm trying to think. So some of you might be familiar with the old Gerald Hotel in Fairfield. That was a KV Cap project that we did a few years ago. And I believe 5 out of the 28 units are ADA, but we made all the doorways wide enough for wheelchairs regardless.
Okay.
So we just know that sometimes 5, sometimes 10 or 15% isn't enough.
There's a huge shortage currently.
Yeah, but there are definitely standards that we would have to meet.
Okay.
Because we're using Maine housing.
I'm all set.
Sorry, there was one other question I didn't answer about the elevator.
Yeah.
Right now there's 1 elevator servicing the entire property. And yes, part of our plan also would be to put in a second elevator, because obviously if one is being used for residential, there's kind of sort of a line that has to be drawn. If you don't want the same elevator being used for like an event at the auditorium and all the residential stuff. So there would have to be a second one, but that would be a cost that we're factoring into our budget.
Trish?
There's never enough space for Parks and Rec. I don't want to be like crucified outside for hating children, so that's not what I meant at all. All of the dance studios would not use the stage. It's not big enough for their performances. We already looked into that. We did look into renting out space to them. No one wanted it. And what do you consider affordable? Do you have a price point in mind that you're going to say out loud on camera?
Yeah, affordable. The rates are actually set by Maine Housing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, KV Cap is a developer, but we basically, as soon as we take the funding from an entity like Maine Housing, we have to go by whatever they say. So their rates are for affordable housing, they set whatever the average market rate is for Winslow. And then they say, okay, it has to be, I want to say it's 20% less, but it's a number that they come up with. So
And you don't have that number?
I don't know it off the top of my head. And it would change by next year anyway. So,
Yeah, and part of the plan all along was, we have some time, right? The timetable says that right now, obviously, the building is being used as childcare for the elementary and the schools and for the 6th grades. So right now, through the winter, the plan is to heat the building, with CARES money. But what are you looking for a timeline right now from us, from the town?
yeah, when I first started talking with Mike Hevener about it, the timeline was pre-COVID-19 timeline. And so that whole timeline has been basically thrown out the window. So we were originally thinking by the end of this year, we wanted to have some plan to move forward. But that didn't happen for a lot of reasons.
Right.
So we're flexible though. I mean, we don't have to have anything done by any certain time. Where KV Cap is in the neighborhood for the long term, no matter what. So
One of the things that we're kind of tentatively planning right now is, obviously, Mike Hevener, the old town manager, and I think, Paul, if I'm wrong, let me know, but we were going to form a committee when Mike got back. As Mike is chairman, we have the new town manager coming in the middle of October, and we were going to, Paul's doing 2 jobs right now, so a lot of the progress on this issue has been kind of, put on the wayside till we can get things moving along. But I think in the fall, in October-ish time period there, we're going to form a committee. The committee will look into possible third-party participation into that property and form a committee for specifically Amanda McCaslin. I don't know if Amanda's here. Amanda, would you like to say a few things about the project? Or
I guess I would echo kind of what Trish said before. When we first started talking about this, my thought was, as a taxpayer, we bought a new school, so we wouldn't have to pay for the junior high. But then looking at it and looking at having affordable senior housing, which has been identified in the comprehensive planning that we've been doing as a need for Winslow, also knowing that they're going to do some of the work to bring that other section up to code, it would make sense to try to find either a town with a third party or a nonprofit organization that was willing to go in there. Obviously, Ray, myself, Mike, and Paul have met with the L Fund. We've met with Waterville Opera House. We've met with some concert production folks. No one was willing to be the person. They said, oh, we could use the space for this, or we might rent it for this, but we'd never want to be the third party. I think that's going to be a challenging piece to it. But knowing how much it costs to get rid of the building and knowing how we can always use more space in Winslow, whether that be for rec programming or just for Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, adult aerobics, or even renting the space to maybe third parties that need to rent a space but can't afford something on Main Street, Waterville. So I think it has lots of opportunities worth exploring, especially with the partnership that we have going here and knowing it's an identified need for Winslow. I guess that's what I would say.
Yep, that's fine. And I think we've got a plan for the future to look in. I just didn't want the project I didn't want people to be informed about the project. I didn't want to think that we were just not ignoring that situation. But I think through the winter months and the spring months, as I think we're going to define and look at what concrete areas that we can find people to use the building and get perhaps some commitments moving forward. Go ahead, Ben.
Yes, through the chair, right. Is the school picking up the full amount for the heating of the whole building this winter because of the...
We don't have any money to heat it,
I know.
so I would assume that they are with CARES money. Peter's coming in, he's at a school board meeting right now. When he comes in, and I see him here, I plan on having him come up and address the school issues, update on those things.
Because I know that, with the new addition to high school, that's causing us more money to heat that area.
Yep.
So I wasn't sure on that.
Yeah, Peter's going to come back in a little while, and I think he'll update us on that. Any more questions for Dave? Dave, thank you, and I think there's
Yeah.
more to come in the future if you'd like.
When did you say the new committee will be formed?
Soon, couple months.
Middle of October, probably.
So it's different than the other junior high committee that we have?
This would be.
This is yeah, well, we're all going to discuss it, but this will be like, if we, of like trying to get concrete residents and a concrete third party and trying to specify a little more than the ambiguity that we have right now into what we would use it for and potential sources of income that would help us support that gym auditorium area where where the third party would be involved.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess that would be my final thought for my part here tonight, is that the projects that work best in our experience are the ones that are true partnerships, where it's filling a need for the town in multiple ways, not just for housing, but in as many ways as we can for that property. And it could be as simple as saving $750,000 or saving $500,000, saving some amount of money. Maybe that's helpful for the town. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Reports of committees and commissions, town manager's report, please.
Mr. Chairman, the only thing I have to highlight on my report this month that everybody got was we did pick a police chief. His name is Leonard McDade. He's the chief in Newport right now, and I will bring you a contract at the October meeting. The lawyer and I are drawing that up as we speak, our town lawyer. And we are also going to be paving this week on the turning lane project on the Augusta Road. So that's going to go as far as we can this fall. We're still dealing with utilities, so I'm going to be applying for an extension on that grant till June.
Yep.
Hoping to get about 90% done this fall, and we're going to shut that down next week and pray that the poles aren't there in the spring, because it's pretty frustrating dealing with utilities.
Okay.
I have a
Paul, what
question
about-
that.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Any word on Bassett Road paving?
Last I spoke to them a couple weeks ago, they were a couple weeks out, so I'm hoping before the end of September that that'll get
Thank you.
paved.
Just department, go ahead, sorry, Trish.
In regards to the police chief, so we're voting just on his contract, we're not voting on approving him from the committee? Doesn't the council have to vote approving him, that the committee picked him, and then vote on his contract?
I believe the charter puts the hiring with the town manager. The charter says the town manager appoints, the council confirms.
Right, we have to confirm him and then confirm the contract, or we're just skipping a step and just going straight to the contract?
I believe in the past, you guys have always approved the contract after the manager appointed the person, whether it was myself or the fire chief or the police chief.
So when I vote no, am I voting on no on the contract or no as him as the police chief?
You're voting no on the contract, because the contract will be what we're voting on. Yep.
Okay.
Okay? Okay. On department reports,
right?
Yep, go ahead.
Through the chair, a question for Paul. What is the current status regarding the Benton Avenue paving project?
Benton Avenue right now, we're hoping to get the project out to bids about November. Right now, one of the articles is to accept the USDA grant for that project. I am presently.
But after it goes out for bid, I mean, will there be any work done during this calendar year?
No, there isn't.
What's that?
No, there isn't out.
Oh,
We're bidding in November for spring construction
okay.
and hopefully get completed by about July. We can put the road project out at that time.
Wasn't it originally scheduled to begin this year and finish next year, but now we're going to do it all next
It
year?
was because the financing hasn't fallen through the way we wanted it to.
Okay, but will the whole project be done next calendar
Yes.
year?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Any others? Department heads, would, Haley, would you like to come up and give us a police department update, or?
I imagine that everybody got the report that I sent out. Pretty busy month for August. It was more busy call-wise than July was. Arrests increased significantly. Several new sex cases came in. A lot of follow-up there. Multiple arrests for operating under the influence, domestic violence, assault. A couple of these cases were felonies as well, involving children. A couple of the sex cases were as well. We're currently undergoing a pretty extensive investigation with some break-ins at the some storage units and a couple of motor vehicles. We're fully staffed currently, obviously with the exception of the police chief job. I'm happy about that. Obviously, I've discussed with you guys in the past, it's hard to recruit people, but we don't have a hard time retaining people because of the caliber of the cohesion that we have within our unit. Other than that, not a lot to report.
Thank you, Captain Fleming. Whoop, go ahead.
I sent an email to you, I think it was last week, and then forwarded it to the whole council. We're currently paying Paul to do both jobs, the town manager and public works. We are not paying Haley his chief position, plus it being the police chief, also captain. Are we going to be discussing that, back paying him, voting on it?
We would have to go into executive session to do that, I believe.
Okay.
And so,
Can you put that for next month?
yes,
Okay.
for sure. That would be first one. Thank you very much.
Any questions?
Yeah, any questions for Captain Fleming? No, thank you very much. Ron, would you have anything for really?
I'm here for questions. The fire department has seen a significant increase in call volume within the last 4 to 6 months. We're over 913, 915 calls for the year. We've transported over 120 people to the hospital since we've instituted the ambulance transport service. We're doing great with no hiccups.
Any questions for Ron? Go ahead.
We got that really long email from Paul Began, kind of crucifying you and how you run the department. Are we going to be addressing that as a council? Is someone going to be emailing him back?
Usually the town manager would answer questions. If he needs any assistance from me, yes, that would be.
Was
Have you done that?
were you on that email, Paul? Or was it just the council?
I'll forward it to you.
I think it was just council. I'm not gonna play dumb, but
I didn't see your
I
name.
honestly didn't see, that's why
Yeah.
I'm bringing it up. It's a very lengthy email.
I'm not aware of it.
Go ahead, Ben, go ahead first.
Yeah, through the chair, how much has been billed out now for the transport? I noticed last month you had some information.
Yes, sir. The as of August 31st, the amount that's been billed is over $67,000.
5.7 or 6.7?
6.7, over $67,000. That was as of August 31st. There is a lengthy process from the time you start the transport service and get your approvals through the Medicare, Main Care, Blue Cross, all the different insurance companies before they, I hate to use the term, but recognize you as a legitimate service. There is some lead time, and we're coming up on that time where we should be seeing some revenue coming in. I received an email last week from the third-party billing company that said we should anticipate a large deposit. So that begged the question for me. Large to me might be different than large to you. So I said, can you narrow it down a little bit? And I was given the information that we should be receiving something in the neighborhood of $24,000 or more in terms of a deposit. I called today hoping that it would have been in there, but it's not. But the money will be coming in. An additional $30,000. I got an email saying an additional $30,000 was billed to Medicare.
Okay. Jerry?
Yes, through the chair.
Yep, go ahead.
To the chief, I haven't had some people complain or have observed that on certain calls, there's 3, 4, 5 vehicles townspeople from the fire department going to an incident. And each of them has one, just a driver. One time I happened to be at a place, I saw the ambulance, one person, the rescue, one person, the old rescue, one person, and a couple, I think you were also in there. What's the reason behind it?
What's the reason for getting the equipment to the scene?
Or asking me that. It makes it hard for me to give them an explanation if I don't know the reasons why.
Well, depending on the nature of the call will dictate what we take.
Right.
So depending on the nature of the call will dictate whether we're taking the quint, the tanker, or the quint and the engine, whether we're taking the ambulance, and whether we need the rescue. And if it's a big enough incident, that's what you're paying me for to get there. So that's why I would go. I think I've done a pretty good job being open and clear and transparent with the needs of the department since upon my arrival. And I am doing a pretty good job, I think, managing the department with the resources that we have. The reason there's only one person is that's because that's all the staffing that I have been allowed to have. It's necessary for the equipment to get there, and then we rely on the off-duty people in the call force to show up to operate the equipment. So I'm not quite, I'm kind of...
Thank you, Chief Rodriguez, for your explanation and for your service to the town. I think the question's been answered. Go ahead, Lee.
One kind of follow-up question. Is it standard procedure for a non-emergency call to go out and to have all three members of the department arrive to a non-emergency call in the late night hours?
Well...
And leaving the station?
It's hard for me. If I knew the specific of the call, I could answer that.
It's part of the email.
Oh, I don't, you know.
Well,
I know.
I mean, I think I've been on board with the department from day one and a big advocate for you guys, and I used the service, and I was just, I know myself particularly, I made a call, a non-emergency call, I needed assistance, and I made it clear that it was a non-emergency call, and I knew that I would expect to see, you know, two of the members show up, but I was just kind of, you know, set back seeing all three members on a night call show up at my residence, and then wondering after the fact, was the station unmanned for any amount of time?
Well, to your point, the station can be without staffing, depending on the nature of the emergency. And it has been my directive that when somebody calls for help, that's the nature of the call right then, which would lead to why we take more than one vehicle should the situation dictate that not all the personnel are needed, then the additional person could break off for a subsequent call.
Okay.
I mean, it's difficult I appreciate your support that you've given the fire department. It's greatly appreciated. However, we can't always determine the needs of the call based on what we receive. In your situation, I can't answer why 3 went, but other than that's what I want people to do. I want everybody to go because that's where the call is, so that we can help assist you in what you need.
But does that mean that the station is unmanned for any amount of time?
There's always periods of time, depending on the time of day and the number of calls that we receive, that the station is empty.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was just my question.
Yep, thank you, Lee. Trish, thank you, Jerry. Yep, Trish.
Your SUV, you own it privately, correct?
No, I do. Well, I have an SUV. Yes, I do.
Right. But your chief's SUV.
That was purchased by the town for my use.
Is there a reason why it's unmarked?
I never paid the expense to get it marked.
And we don't require that, correct?
No.
And how long have you worked in a fire department?
For Winslow?
Nope. In your life?
completing 28 years.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Chief Rodriguez, Jerry, Ben, everybody else set? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you,
Thanks,
Chief. I noticed, I saw Peter come in. Peter, could you, as brief as possible, give us an update on the school system?
It's crowded. All right, so I'm sorry to be a little bit late, but we just had a school board meeting, and Joel is with me someplace. I saw him walking, there he is in the corner, doing the social distancing. Proud to report, opening of schools. We opened up last week. After a tremendous amount of work and planning, it went exceptionally well. Exceptionally well. Very pleased to report that the opening of schools has gone well. Now the challenge is to maintain it and continue on with everything that's happening. Last week we also had a ribbon cutting. Some of you were kind enough to join us for that ribbon cutting. If you missed it, if you go to the Morning Sentinel electronic edition this morning, you can look at that, you can view it. Very nice event. We opened up a very beautiful wing, junior high for grades 7 and 8. Our 6th graders, as you know, are still in this building because of COVID and the need for social distancing so that we can get our schools open. But that wing opened up, and the Morning Sentinel did a very nice article on all of that. And so please take a moment to look at that if you get a chance to do so. Tonight, the school board meeting met. There's an emergency meeting to have a conversation about athletics here in Winslow and what we're going to do with athletics this fall. They voted to have athletics for those teams that could compete under the MPA, CDC, governor's guidelines, and MDOE. So we are moving ahead with athletics, with those areas that can compete. And basically, those are the highlights.
Okay. And again, thank you for your work, and I'm sure you guys are tremendously busy, and hopefully things will move forward. After, I think you got 4 weeks, and then you'll go into another, this is the kind of like pods now you have right now.
Yep, actually what we have is we were originally scheduled to go 3 weeks and then take a day to evaluate and assess. We moved school back a week because we didn't have the proper PPE at the time. It hadn't arrived. And so we have everything now. So last week we started. This week we have another week. This Friday we kept our in-service day the same day because we didn't want to upset the parents' schedules because they already knew that Friday was going to be a day of in-service. That day is intended for us to evaluate how things are going and to see if we continue with the current status that we're in or what our next steps are. In terms of our current status and in terms of the state and safety guidelines, those guidelines are still in place. Nothing has changed. And those guidelines require us to have social distancing, which makes it very difficult for us to bring more students in, whether it be in a classroom setting or in a lunchroom setting. So we need to maintain those guidelines. So it's going to be difficult for us to expand on bringing in students as long as those safety guidelines are in place.
Any questions for Peter? Go ahead, Ben.
Yes, through the chair. I brought a question up earlier, Peter, but you weren't here. Is the school budget taking care of the heating of the whole junior high for the winter?
We are taking care, not our school budget. We qualified for the CARES money as well as other school districts and the relief funds. So through the relief funds and the CARES money, Ben, we are able to purchase the oil to keep this building warm this year. We have the 6th graders here, and we have the daycare program that's been expanded in order to help our families. So it's not going to be as hot throughout the entire building that it's been, but the areas where we have students and staff, it will be, comfortable.
So that is separated out then, so you can heat certain parts of that building. I didn't know how much is separated.
Yeah, I believe that we can. Same with lights. Obviously, we're going to be covering the electrical cost as well.
And the maintenance.
And the maintenance, but it's going to be safety maintenance, not anything where it's going to be, improvements in that sense.
Thank you, Peter.
And that's a piece, Ben. If there's there's nothing budgeted if a boiler blows or something like that, so we're all keeping our fingers crossed. But it's just, those are the pieces that we have in place, and
I
it's not.
noticed back when we first started talking with David Cap, it was when they were gonna take over the building and you didn't heat it, that was pre-COVID.
Right.
It was brought up that maybe if you had to use some of it, that there would be a joint thing to heat it and maintain it for the winter. But like you say, you get this new CARES money, which probably takes care of it.
Correct. We wrote that as part of our grant, part of our plan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Jerry, do you have a question for Peter? No? Okay. You're all set? Can I have a motion to accept all other financial reports? So second. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Public comment section of the meeting, that anybody would have any other public comment that they would have? Yep. You might go.
I have a question for the council regarding the charter. I just wanted to know the council's understanding of hiring a department head. That's really my question.
Yep. Could you state your name and?
Cameron Huggins.
Yep.
Cameron Huggins.
Okay.
So that's just my question to the council is what is the understanding of hiring a department head?
Which is why I asked that tonight.
Because according to the charter, it says that you must
The town manager is the personnel director, and he has full authority to hire and fire department heads, is my understanding. Is that correct?
That is correct. But according to the charter, it says the town manager shall appoint the town clerk, treasurer, tax collector, town assessor, and department head subject to the confirmation of the town council. So I'm just confused as to, does the town council vote on the contract or the department head? Because according to the charter, it sounds like department head. So I just want to know the understanding of the council.
Me too.
Well, we've never run into that before.
Well,
The town manager presents the contract, and if we accept the contract, the guy's hired, or the person is hired.
Okay.
If we don't accept the contract, if we don't like the terms and turn it down, then he has to rework the contract.
Right, but the charter says you authorize the hire, essentially. It doesn't say contract anywhere in there. It's kind of like an oversight that the council oversees. It's kind of a checks and balances. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just wondering how the council feels about it.
Go ahead, Ben.
Yes, through the chair. My understanding has always been that the town manager, we give the town manager the authorization to do the hiring. As far as I know, we don't vote on the hiring. Just like you said before, we vote on the contract after one has been picked. But we don't actually vote on accepting because they had a meeting with a committee. Okay, and that committee did all of the interviewing and all that, and then they determined by their vote who is being picked for the job. At that point, then the town manager takes that, and between him and our town lawyer, set up the contract. They bring the contract back to us, and we do vote for the money.
You know, I think what we can do, and I think what we should do here is take some legal advice from Bill Lee, and just pose him the questions that have been asked here, and to clarify that issue. I believe we know the path forward, and we are correct in the path forward, but we can get some legal advice too, and make sure that that's where we're at. If that's so with the council, go ahead, Trish.
I agree. I want to know, like, there's no contract that you're going to bring forward that I'm going to vote yes on because Haley Fleming deserved the job.
Well,
So I'm going to vote no. So when I vote no, I want to know if I'm going to vote no on the contract or if I'm voting no on his employment.
I think we can have a clarification from the town attorney for there, and I think that's where we need to be. We need to either decide from when we get an answer from the town attorney, we will then at that point in time decide a path forward on where to go.
Yeah, it's just very vague in the
Yep,
charter.
sure.
The way it was explained to us by the town attorney at one point was exactly what you just got done saying. We're voting on the contract, not on the employment. Because the personnel director, being the town manager, has full oversight of who they hire.
That's correct. That's my understanding.
That's fine.
This was brought up with a previous situation. We had not so long ago, when we were asking for information and couldn't get it.
Right. So
Because we're not privy to that information.
But where's the
We-
checks and balances?
Because it's a personnel issue, we have no oversight over personnel issues. That's why we only vote on the contract, is how our town attorney explained it to us. Doesn't mean we agree or disagree about it.
Who represents the town, right?
What's that?
Who represents the town.
Right.
So he could hire anybody he wanted to, he could hire his brother-in-law all day long.
In theory, that's true,
No,
but he wouldn't have his job very long if his hires were not up to snuff. That's our job, is overseeing the town manager.
That doesn't seem right,
Why?
because it seems as though that there's a whole council that
The
would
whole
approve
council
of
hires the town manager. The town manager is then the personnel director. Otherwise, you get into this thing where somebody calls up a town councilor and the town councilor goes in and starts ragging on department heads. And that's not our job, that's the town manager's job, to straighten out the department heads because they're his hire or her hire. And a town manager won't have their job very long if his personnel decisions are not good,
Or hers.
or hers.
Because we can say her.
We can say hers.
Any other public comment from anybody, please, before? If there's no other public comment, is Phoenix here? I know he was supposed to. Phoenix, could you come up during this time? Part of the meeting, we have a diversity resolution, and Phoenix has been on a task force from the town of Waterville in Winslow, in Fairfield, and Oakland. And could you go a little bit about, and then what kind of like what we're voting on tonight, Phoenix?
Certainly happy to. Thanks for having me, everybody, and appreciate you guys putting on the agenda last month as well as this month to talk about it. This was essentially an initiative program that we put together in order to increase economic development. This was a program that started back in probably February, March. I'm a recent new person to the community coming from Virginia, and we noticed that a lot of grants that the region is working towards, so including bringing new companies and businesses reshoring here into the Kennebec County. There's a lot of diversity talk in some of these grants, and as well as when we're talking to larger companies and corporations that want to come to the region, they do ask about the diversity of the region, Maine being what it is. There's some easy strides that can be taken, including these initiatives. And so it's talked about mostly through, I think it's KV-COG and the Chamber of Commerce, the region. You know, how could we best address this? So when you consider when you're writing for a grant, this can be a checkbox that's on there. What does your community do in terms of supporting diversity and increasing economic development in the area? And this is a program that we came up with that was really simple, really straightforward. It's taken a lot of work to really word craft and make sure that the wording on this particular initiative really makes sense for what we can actually reach here in the Kennebec region. So if you read through it, you'll see that there's not a whole lot of we will do this, we're going to do this, and we're going to reform this and that. That's a whole nother world of things that we may get into at some point in time in the future. This is a simple initial step to say, you know, we are interested in figuring out ways to show that should a company want to move here, or if we're attempting to relocate a company coming from China back into the U.S., hopefully here in the Kennebec County, that we can show that we're actually open to diversity initiatives, particularly since so much has gone on over the summer in terms of civil rights and things of that nature. This was a program, a project that we started taking well before that. Has nothing to do with the Black Lives Matter type events. This was definitely looked at as a program that we wanted to say, how can we increase economic development here in the Kennebec Valley, make sure there's more jobs, you know, bring more industry here, and it really didn't have as much of a lightning rod as we've probably seen in the news here. So I think that's a pretty broad look at what we've done. Hopefully you guys had a chance over the last couple months, or a couple weeks anyway, to read through what we've worked on there, and I'm happy to take questions.
There's been other communities that have adopted basically this format. That was, what are the communities so far, Phoenix?
Right, so the most recent one is Fairfield. They had a lot of questions that were really excellent questions, not a whole lot of debate necessarily, asking, what does it mean? And they were really good questions about, like, one council member asked, which shelf does this go on? And to some degree, yes, this is a initiative that maybe goes on the shelf and it takes up some space, but it also says a lot about the community that we're actually moving forward in a way that hopefully is very even keeled and very sensible. Also, the town of Oakland did a lot of work on this and they passed it. Not that because one town nearby us means that we should also do it and just blindly take it on. That hopefully this is something that shows unity of our 4 communities in this central area, that if we can sign on and get behind this together, that it really kind of makes us a bellwether for the state to say, hey, we're doing this, we're making progress, and it's not a controversial statement, really.
Yep. Go ahead, Lee.
Just a quick question. Has any of the surrounding outlying communities reached out to this committee or group that's started this, or are there any other like-minded individuals working on this same kind of diversity statement for other communities? And have any of those reached out to maybe get the help from this one to start their own?
Appreciate the question. Absolutely. This has been a really interesting development for this particular group. As I said, initially this was set up to be something that we could show this area of Maine is on the forefront, that we could put it forward as a competitive component to any other place that a company may decide to go. But the word has gotten out. A number of communities in the area have also reached out to us from, I believe, the town of Jay reached out, and Gardner, I hope I'm saying that right. Like I said, I'm only about 6 to 7 months new to the area. All the way down to some groups in Portland have also reached out asking. So we're actually a leader in this, and folks have really enjoyed looking at what we've written. That when you look at the wording, it's not a controversial piece of resolution. That it's very even keeled. It's very economic development minded, and folks have really been asking a lot of how can they do what we're doing. So we've been asked by a number of communities here in Maine, as well as far down as my home in Virginia, have asked how we're doing this here and why they can't do it when they've been working on these kind of things for years down there. So it's also got that possibility of our region becoming not just a leader, but also a resource for other communities.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
Are we voting as like a whole council, or we vote like adopting it as like a town? Like, I just want to know, we're voting on it, then I'm representing everyone in my district that would be in favor for this or not in favor. So that's kind of what I asked you the last time.
It's a resolution.
It's a resolution.
Yeah, it's a resolution, so it's up to council. Any other questions for Phoenix? Thank you for coming in, and
Appreciate it.
thank you for presenting to the group and
Absolutely.
stuff. Yep. Any other public comments tonight? If no other public comment, I'll close the public comment section, and we'll get to old business. Ordinance number 4-2020, an amendment to the Winslow zoning map to rezone the following lots on tax map 13, lot 115, from high-density residential to mixed use. What is the pleasure of the council?
So moved.
Second.
Second, discussion? If no discussion, I close the discussion. We'll have a roll call vote, please.
Ben Twitchell?
Yes.
Jerry Clear?
Yes.
Steve Russell? Oh, he stepped out.
He's in the
Oops, sorry. Whoops, sorry.
Tricia Ayer?
Yes.
Jeff West?
Yes.
Lee Trahan?
Yes.
Rick Aaron?
Yes.
So it's 6-0.
New business, ordinance number 5-2020, providing for the amendment to ordinance number 24-1972, Chapter 2, Administration, Article 4, Public Cemeteries, we're replacing it with the attached section 221, 222, 223, 224, and 225. Would it be the pleasure of the council,
So
please?
moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. If I can find my ordinance proposed. All right.
You were in there. Yeah.
Question I have is, it says that we're gonna have 5 members of the cemetery committee, and it's gonna be staggered terms.
Yep.
Right. When are those staggered terms gonna begin? How are they gonna be arranged?
Still working through that right now.
Yep. We're still working through the particulars of it, but this is just a general conceptual that we're bringing to the council at this point in time.
So, I'd like to put an amendment that the staggered terms, the first ones would be, trying to think now, would be so that they would be attached to the, what do you call it? Would be attached to not necessarily the, not necessarily to the districts,
Yeah.
but would be done like a district. You'd have, you know, so that they would be staggered real easy.
Yep.
So that we could find them.
Yeah. Would it be possible,
That's what
this is the
staggered-
first reading, right? This is the
But that'd be a
first.
staggered term.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If,
There's no amendment needed.
yeah,
Just saying.
yeah.
Because you'd have to start with X amount of positions at 3 years, X at 2 years, X at 1 year. Just like we do with everything
Everything
else.
else, literally everything else.
So,
Yep, go ahead.
if I may, Jerry, are you basically trying to request that we stagger them and collate them the same way as we do the school board and the,
Yes.
and the council?
Yep.
That's what a staggered term is.
Yep.
But I mean, to keep them in the same order, I would assume, correct?
Yep, not to
Right.
replenish everybody
Yeah.
resigns all at once or,
That's what I was trying to
you know,
say.
yeah.
The reason is the original 1972 committee somewhere that disappeared. People forgot about it.
The cemetery committee? or-
Yes.
Yep, yep. And this is, Amanda, could you just come up for a minute, please, again, if you would? Especially under this, and Jeff, just chime in anytime you want. You know, this is because we really don't have a policy for cemeteries at the present time, nor somebody in charge of the cemeteries at this time, and
Right,
so.
so at
if-
some point, the committee kind of, it just stopped meeting. And so decisions are being made that technically isn't following what our town says it should. So in looking at it and looking at modifications that need to be made, I sit down with Jeff and Ray and a resident who's been volunteering for the cemeteries, and we came up with these edits, thinking that this would set it better up for success. We have a lot of cemeteries that need a lot of, like, more detailed looks at them and to see what we can do to make them better. Sean Soucy's already done a great job towards that. He's been fixing
Steve.
some of the old, Steve, Sean's his son. Steve Soucy's done a great job fixing the old stones. He's gotten certified to do that. We were able to get some materials donated to help him with that, but I'm just trying to give the cemeteries the look they need by looking at this.
And before we put this in place, and if I'm wrong, Jeff, please, is that the superintendent of the board of the cemeteries was in charge of the cemeteries
Right.
and made all the decisions with the cemeteries. And now, considering that's a defunct, really, organization at the present time, we're trying to bring in some of the decision-making process to the, unfortunately, to the Park and Rec Department, there's lack of a better, and so Amanda has graciously kind of volunteered.
Yeah, it would be like a partnership between myself and the trustees of the cemetery.
Yeah.
And that really is what needs to happen, and I think this sets it better up for success.
Yeah, and it all stemmed from, Amanda was in charge of the cemetery crew that cut the grass and is really in charge of the upkeep of the cemeteries. And having a workable board and a workable group that we can fundraise, not only fundraise, but set aside some money for upkeep of the cemeteries in the town of Winslow, and give them the due respect that they really need, and moving forward, an organization that's in place that can make decisions. Any other questions for Amanda while she's up there, or on this ordinance? Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Amanda.
Any other questions? If no other questions, can...
Back again.
Okay.
All right, now I found it. It says, "The council shall set the number of trustees to 5. Trustee term of office shall run for 3 years. Such terms to be staggered."
Yeah.
Now, the question is, are we gonna stagger them as 2, 2, and 1? Or 1, 2, 2? Or are we gonna land up with all of them 1, 1, and 3?
I think it's two, I mean,
We
I don't
really
think...
didn't talk about it. We're just gonna look at another entity within the town and kind of follow that guideline.
Yeah. I think it seems to make sense to 2 and 1, but, well, so I think it wouldn't be...
And when would the terms begin?
As soon as we get the word out and get
Yeah, as soon as
get
we...
appointments.
Yeah, appoint them, I think.
I appoint you
I don't know, with committees like...
I hope so.
We're gonna have to...
I want to be there.
for the longest.
We'll be lucky if we fill these slots, if you know what I mean. But we can, I think that will be up to the committee, or the, once they meet too, is when we get people for this committee, they can meet and decide on what the terms are, and then come to the superintendent and then make that decision. I think that would be the best bet. I don't think, unless you want to make an amendment to go 2, 2, and 1, I'll be more than open to
Make an amendment.
You want to make an amendment?
Amendment to go 2, 2, and 1.
Okay, all right. Are you okay with that, Amanda? Yep, okay. So the only thing, amendment, so, motion's on, is there a second to the motion to make the second, and then discussion? If no discussion, all those in favor, I think it's just a raise your hand vote. Is it?
I think we should do a roll call.
Roll call, okay, to stagger the terms for 2, 2, and 1 for the cemeteries committee.
Ben Twitchell?
Yes.
Jerry Clary?
Yes.
Steve Russell? Patricia Ayer?
Yes.
Jeff West?
Yes.
Lee Trahan?
Yes.
And Ray Karen?
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so move, so now we're going to ordinance number 5, 220, what we just said, plus staggered terms for first year, 2, 2, and 1 for the 3-year terms. Voting, is there any other discussion on the amended item? If no other discussion on the amended item, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Ben Twitchell?
Yes.
Jerry Clarion?
Yes.
Steve Russell?
Yes.
Patricia Ayer?
Yes.
Jeff West?
Yes.
Lee Trahan?
Yes.
Ray Karen?
Yes. Order number 18-2020, providing for the sale of tax acquired property.
So moved.
So moved. Seconded. Any discussion, please? If no discussion, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Ben Twitchell?
Yes.
Jerry Clarion? Steve Russell?
Yes.
Patricia Ayer?
Yes.
Jeff West?
Yes.
Lee Trahan?
Yes.
Ray Karen?
Yes. Order number 19-2020, providing for the authorization for the interim town manager to prepare a quitclaim deed which will allow the transfer of properties located at 150 China Road, tax map 16, lot 78-2, in China Road, tax map 16, lot 77, for the amount of taxes owed. What's pleasure of the
So
council?
moved.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yes, go ahead, Paul.
Just so the council's aware, when I talked about this to Judy, she was kind of adamant that Mr. Davis should only be getting the first property and not the second one for tax acquired, but that's a decision the council needs to make. I think it's kind of a landlocked property, and...
Tom can't hear you.
I'm sorry, when I spoke to Judy about this, she was kind of adamant that you only had right to the property with a warehouse on it, that the other property should go out to sale, but that's up to the council.
Can you come up to the mic, please? And give us your thoughts.
How big is the parcel in question?
1.8.
If I understand this, we've been paying taxes on it since 2007, up until Judy changed it 2018.
So you, at this
And
point,
Bank of Siam's had paid for it for 15 years prior.
so
That's
it's
who we
been
bought
under your
it.
control.
Pardon me?
It was under your control those first years. Those first years you were paying, it was under your control, you assumed it was yours.
Yes.
I'm just making the council aware of where she was coming from, so that there's no surprises if.
So, can I just ask a question?
Yes, of course.
So you were paying taxes on all three of those properties?
We're paying on everything there, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So why would we take one of those properties out of the loop? That's my thing.
I agree.
If he's willing to pay the back taxes from 18 to 20, which he's been paying on since 2007, when he assumed he brought the whole property in the first place, according to the newspaper article that was put out, that he sent us a picture of, that showed all three properties on it, how are we gonna take that back? I mean, I'm sorry, I can't.
What does Judy think we're gonna do with the land?
I don't know.
I mean, it'd be
She's not
landlocked at
here,
that point, wouldn't
and
It's landlocked, you'd landlocked after that.
So it's absolutely no use to us,
I won't do anything with it.
or anybody else for that matter.
Well, it's accessible through the right of way that he's on.
Right, you're gonna give someone the access to the property that got taken away?
You can't.
I'm just making the
right
council
away
aware
there,
of
you don't have to get.
the concern.
No, I understand what you're saying,
I
but I
have no
mean,
problem letting Mr.
the man's
Davis.
been paying taxes on it for
Go ahead, Ben.
13
Yeah, let's move the question.
That's what?
Move the question. No, let's vote on it.
We're still having discussion.
Still having discussion.
I mean, I can, if somebody has.
I'm just
other-
speaking my piece on it, I mean.
Yep, and that's, you're right, that's for sure. Any other comments that we have?
I think Judy's wrong. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, the only thing I see right now is, I didn't get an explanation of what her concerns are. What are her concerns? That, is it legal or what is it?
From her concern, she said it's legal, but she's not here tonight, so.
It's legal then, okay.
It's ours right now, it's been foreclosed, and it's your right to dispose of it as you wish.
Okay.
If it wasn't landlocked, I might think differently, but it's certainly
I agree,
probably not a use.
Yeah.
And we would put it out to bid and the neighbor would buy it anyway, so.
Right.
I mean,
How could she say that it's legal and not provide us with a description or an explanation? Must not
That's,
be that, and then she's not here.
that's kind of like, right, which of the matter. And this is the second reading, correct? Lisa?
This is the first.
this is the first.
First reading, so we do have some time to clarify.
Wasn't this the, didn't,
I thought this
No,
was.
we've kept tabling.
pretty sure
We
this
kept
was.
tabling.
We kept tabling it.
We took
Okay.
this out and removed it from the other
Yep, I
property.
think we can.
Correct.
If everybody wants to talk to Judy about this for the
Yep,
second
that's a
reading,
good
then
idea.
they can. I think we should proceed with the first reading. I think we should accept for the first reading, and then we can ask questions
fine.
and
I just-
further. Okay. I end discussion. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Ben Twitchell.
Yes.
Jerry Querian. Steve Russell.
Yes.
Patricia Ayer.
Yes.
Jeff West.
Yes.
Lee Trahan.
Yes.
And Ray Care.
Yes. Order number 20-2020, providing for the authorization of $1,902,000 of the town general obligation bonds to finance sewer and stormwater improvements known as RUS Bulletin 1780-27, which is the Benton Avenue project for next year. Open for discussion?
Yes. And the reason for that, the work not being done this year, is farmers, what was that? U.S. Department of Agriculture, basically Farmers Home, did not get us the money.
They
for
will
us.
not give us the money till next year when we finish the project.
Right.
But this is a formality to accept the loan that they've authorized for us. It's a matter of going through the process, signing all the letters that they need to get. I am presently working with our local bank to get interim financing to do the project. It's kind of a little weird way of doing business, but they don't give us the money till we're done.
And these are 30-year bonds, if I'm right, Paul?
Correct.
So if you're looking at that amount of money, that would come to about
I think it's like $82,000 a year, I think is the payment. At 1.5%, pretty hard to beat.
That's from the sewer department funds anyway, right?
Correct.
Yes. If there's no
We need
further,
some
yep.
We need some data anyway.
It will help.
If no further discussion, can I have a roll call vote, please, Lisa?
Ben Twitchell. Jerry Query.
Yes.
Steve Russell.
Yes.
Patricia Ayer. Jeff West.
Yes.
Lee Trahan.
Yes.
Ray Karen.
Yes. Order number 21-2020, providing for the authorization for the tax collector to sell 101 acres of tax-acquired property on the Maple Ridge Road Tax Map 3, lots 3, 8-H and 8-1, with a minimum bid of $85,000 and an
Second.
easement from Farm Land Trust.
You got a first, second?
Got a first? Can I?
You have a second?
Second?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yep, go ahead, Steve.
It doesn't mention in here how we would sell this, and I assumed that we were going to sell it as a bid process. Is that correct?
That was my intention.
Should
It
that
says
be
it-
included in here? That-
Well, it says with the minimum
Minimum
bid,
bid of,
minimum
Okay.
bid, so.
Because in the past, we've just listed with our tax acquired property with a real estate developer. This is new. This is a different way of doing it.
Correct. That was the understanding when we met with the Ag Committee, that they want to put it out to bids. We have at least 4 interested parties,
Right.
and maybe more.
And the other thing I would bring up is we had it, somehow we got things backwards with the last time, and we accepted a bid of 70, but we weren't collecting the money from Farmland Trust. So in this way, if someone buys this for $100,000, they're going to get a check from Farmland Trust for a little over $30,000 and purchase the land for a little over 70. And I'm just using round figures there. They aren't exact. Farmland Trust has to do an appraisal of the property first to determine the difference between high use and the difference between agriculture. And then they come up with 75% of that. Does everybody understand that?
Yes. And pretty much it stays into agricultural use.
Correct.
Farmland
that's
Trust
the-
is buying the development rights.
Yep, and so, yep.
And I believe this was the council's wishes the last time it went up for sale, that just the sale fell through, and
Sale fell through.
we gotta go back through it.
And this way, we should realize a lot more money doing it this way, because it's opening up the process to at least 4 bidders that I know of. And we'll guarantee a minimum bid of $85,000.
Yep. Any other further discussion? If no further discussion, could I have a roll call vote, please, on order 21-2020?
Ben Twitchell. Jerry Query.
Yes.
Steve Russell.
Yes.
Patricia Ayer.
Yes.
Jeff West.
Yes.
Lee Trahan.
yes.
Ray Karen.
Yes. Resolution number 34-2020, providing for the application for restaurant class 1, 2, 3, 4
So moved.
liquor license. Second.
Could we combine those with resolution?
Just vote real quick.
Yeah,
Let's
we
just vote, let's
real
just
quick.
vote. Yep,
All in favor?
okay.
It's a resolution.
Yep, sounds good. It's
Show
a
of hands.
resolution.
All in favor?
Yep. All those in favor? All those opposed? Raise a pass. Resolution number 35-2020.
So moved.
So moved. Second?
Yep. All those in favor? Raise your hand. Resolution number 36-2020, providing for approval of election clerks to assist the town clerk warden with voting activities for the upcoming state and
So
municipal.
moved.
Second.
Is that a roll call?
It is not.
It is not. Any discussion, please? If no discussion, all those in favor? All those opposed? Resolution number 37-2020, providing the adoption of the attached request for the town of Winslow diverse
So moved.
proclamation.
Second.
That is a hand.
It is.
All, any discussion, please? If no discussion, all those in favor? All those opposed? Resolution number 38-2020, providing for the authorization for the town manager to accept $97,904.76 in federal funding for the Department of Homeland Security for Winslow Fire Department. Can I have a first and second?
We already did.
Oh, you did,
Stephen
okay.
Mann, yep.
Any discussion?
Thank you, chief.
If no discussion, is that
Thank
roll
you,
call?
Chief.
No,
That's not a roll call, that's a hand vote?
it's a
I couldn't see him,
resolution.
I
Yep.
thought he
The
was gone.
resolution, sorry.
Last two votes.
All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, resolution number 39-2020. Providing for the
Second.
Austin Town Manager to transfer $6,000 from track and to the school home, general election to cover the extra expenses related to November 3rd election. Any discussion? If no discussion?
Yep.
There's discussion?
Well, first of all, those numbers have changed, haven't they?
They have. This afternoon, I got information from the Secretary of State's office that per machine, instead of $1,850, it would be $614, which is a huge decrease. We will be reimbursed up to $1,500 for the absentee ballot drop box. That was the other one. So that brings us down to $13,695.70.
I just have one other concern with this. We have a contingency fund. Why aren't we using that instead of taking money out of other places? I know we're still early in the budget year, but if we have to steal money later from something, I'd rather steal it then than steal it now. We have contingency money for a reason. This is a good reason right here. My whole problem being that those other accounts never getting paid back.
Go ahead, Steve.
I sort of agree. I was just be curious, what do we have in our contingency fund? How much money did we set aside last year?
I think we budgeted 40 grand.
Yeah, I don't have the budget with me, so I mean.
If we budgeted 40 and we haven't used any at all, and this is down to $1,600, is that what you said?
We're down to $13,695.
And we haven't used the contingency yet, I would say, I agree with Jeff, that if we need to rob these counts later because something comes up and we don't have an contingency account, we can rob them then.
Looks like we have 43,000.
43,000. We're gonna use 13,000, we'll still have 30 there.
Yep, okay.
Well, it's
Just a
less than
thought.
16.
13 is
Somebody
what
want
we're
to
gonna use.
amend this then?
Well, it's gonna have to be an amendment, correct?
Yeah.
Well, we don't need it, we can just defeat this and she can just, the town manager can authorize to take it out of the contingency fund, I assume. I'm not sure we have to vote to remove it from the contingency fund, do we?
I think anytime you transfer money, somebody has to approve it.
Perhaps.
I think it's over 10,000. I think you can do 10,000 without authorization.
Yes, I think it is 10,000.
So would it be just easier to amend it, Lisa?
Mhm.
Okay, I'll make
That
an
would be
amendment.
perfect.
To take the total amount of $13,695.70 out of contingency.
Correct.
Okay,
Second that amendment.
second. So discussion on the amendment? No discussion on the amendment. The amendment would then be providing for authorization to town manager to transfer $13,695.70 from contingency to cover the election fund, the upcoming election.
Correct.
For the election fund.
For the election that's coming up. These costs are incurred because of what we were dealing with for November.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's the amended. Do I have a,
We have a first and a second.
we have a first and a second. Any discussion on that? If no discussion, is that a roll call? Oh,
It
go
is.
ahead, Jerry.
Yes. Be it resolved by the town council of the town of Winslow, the town manager is hereby. So we gotta strike most of that right out.
We're just gonna take it out of contingency, that's the,
Yep.
that's the,
Yeah.
that's
But
the
you gotta
amendment.
make sure that we get it all struck out, just.
Yep. Yep, we
Taking
will.
that amount out of contingency.
Yep, sure. Yep. Go ahead, Lee.
Can we waive the second reading and just do it?
Don't need a
There is no
second reading.
second.
Just a resolution.
Resolution.
End of discussion. Show of hands. All those in favor? All those opposed? Any discussion? There's no discussion items. I make a motion to, whoop, go ahead, Steve.
Technically, did we just vote on the amendment, now we have to vote on the resolution?
Yes.
I think so.
That's true. Sorry about that, Steve. So now on the resolution.
As amended.
As amended.
As amended for the town, authorization of town manager to transfer $13,695.70 from the contingency fund to the election fund for the November 3rd election.
You're not gonna have much left of that, resolution. By the time
Not
we're
gonna be
done,
much, no.
it'll be probably 2 lines.
Go ahead, Steve.
I'm just all in favor, I thought you said.
Oh, all those in favor? I did.
I'm sorry.
I'll say it now. Make a motion to adjourn if there's no other discussion.
Second.
Second.
Nobody can leave. I got a bunch of papers for you guys to sign.
Meeting adjourned.